When we talk the worries, when we talk about limits, most people point to what they can't do physically, what they don't have, or the circumstances holding them back. They'll tell you about time, money, or opportunity. They'll list reasons why they can't change their job, why they can't go after their dreams, or why they can't push further than where they are now. But if we look closer, we see that most of these so-called limits are not real. They are stories created in the mind. And once you recognize that, you start to see the incredible truth. The walls you thought were around you were never really there. Think about fear for a moment. Fear is one of the biggest architects of the walls we live inside, but fear is not always based on reality. Many times it is based on imagination, on what might go wrong, on what could happen. The mind projects failure before we even begin, and because of that, we stop ourselves. The truth is, we don't fail because the world stops us. We fail because we stop ourselves before the world even has a chance. The Shaolin perspective reminds us that these fears are like shadows. They appear large, but they have no substance. Once you shine a light on them, doubt is another prison. How many times have you had an idea, a dream, or even a small step you wanted to take, but the voice in your head told you, you're not good enough. You're not ready. Who do you think you are? That voice is not the truth. It is conditioning. Maybe it comes from past failures, maybe from other people's opinions, maybe from your own perfectionism. But here's the secret. Doubt grows only when you feed it with attention. When you take one step despite doubt, it weakens. When you act instead of waiting for certainty, you start to break free. Now let's talk about the past. So many people live inside limits because of what has already happened. A mistake, a failure, a rejection, a trauma. It becomes a story you tell yourself about who you are and what you're capable of. But if you look closely, the past is not a chain unless you keep holding it. The Shaolin lesson is simple. The past cannot reach into the present unless you invite it. What you carry in your mind becomes the weight that defines your limit. Drop it and you realize the weight was never attached to you. It was always something you chose to hold. Breaking these mental barriers is not about pretending life is easy. It is about seeing clearly that the real fight is within. When you practice awareness, when you take the time to sit in silence, to breathe deeply, to observe your thoughts, you begin to notice how many of them are simply old patterns, recycled fears, and second-hand beliefs. That awareness is the first crack in the wall. You don't need to knock the wall down all at once. You just need a crack to let light through. And then, step by step, you walk through. I'll share a truth that is both uncomfortable and liberating. You are responsible for the limits you obey. Yes, circumstances can be hard. Yes, the world can be unfair. But responsibility means you are not powerless. Responsibility means you have the ability to respond. That is what breaks the illusion. The Shaolin monks train in conditions that seem impossible, not because their bodies are superhuman, but because their minds have been freed from excuses. They know pain will come, but they don't give it the power to stop them. They know doubt will arise, but they don't let it define their reality. The same applies to you. What if, starting today, you decided to question every limit you've been living with? What if you asked yourself, is this really true, or is this just a story I've accepted? What if instead of assuming you can't, you asked, what if I could? Shift alone is the beginning of transformation, because when the mind no longer treats its stories as facts, you begin to step into a space of freedom you may have never experienced before. And this is where strength is born, not in lifting more weight, not in climbing higher mountains, but in realizing that the mountain in your mind was the heaviest one all along. The Shaolin path is not about conquering the world outside. It is about mastering the one inside. When you learn to see that the bars of the cage were only drawn in your imagination, you stop living like a prisoner and start living like a creator. The truth is, the biggest limits we face are not real. They are shadows of fear, echoes of doubt, and memories of the past. When you stop believing in them, they vanish. And in that moment, you don't just break limits. You realize there were none to begin with. If you want to understand true strength, you have to start by looking at the relationship between your mind and your body. Too often, people treat them as if they're separate, as if one belongs to the world of logic and thoughts, and the other belongs to the physical. But the Shaolin way reminds us that they are one, and that whatever happens in the mind is reflected in the body, and whatever happens in the body deeply influences the mind. The reason most people feel stuck, tired, or trapped inside their limits is because they haven't learned how to align these two forces. Think about what happens when you're stressed. Your mind is racing and your body follows with tension, tight shoulders, a heavy chest, shallow breathing. Now think about the opposite. When you feel deeply calm, your body relaxes, your breath slows, and your mind suddenly feels clearer. Neither side acts alone. They move together always. And if you don't learn how to work with that connection, you'll constantly feel like you're fighting yourself. But if you do learn, you unlock a power that changes everything. The Shaolin monks understand this better than anyone. Their training is not just about hitting harder or kicking higher. Every movement is linked with breath, with awareness, with intention. When they strike, it is not random, it's rooted in focus. When they sit in stillness, it is not weakness, it's strength in its purest form. The lesson for us is this: if you want to master your outer world, you must first train the inner one. The body and mind are not enemies, they are partners. And when they act as one, limits dissolve. We live in a world where people push their bodies to exhaustion, thinking that's discipline. Others escape into their minds, overthinking every detail, never taking action. Neither extreme creates freedom. Balance does. The Shaolin path is not about punishing yourself, nor is it about living in endless comfort. It's about discipline that comes from harmony. It's about training the body in ways that strengthen the mind and calming the mind in ways that guide the body. This is how resilience is built, not by force, but by alignment. One of the most powerful practices that shows this connection is breath. It is so simple that most people overlook it, yet it is the bridge between your inner and outer worlds. Your breath changes with your thoughts, and your thoughts change with your breath. When you are anxious, your breath shortens. When you are at peace, your breath deepens. Imagine if, instead of being controlled by your emotions, you learn to use your breath to calm the storm, to steady the chaos. That is not just theory. It is a skill. And when you practice it, you discover that control doesn't come from the outside, it comes from within. Another key is movement. The body was not designed to sit in stillness all day. When energy is trapped, the mind becomes heavy. When you move, you release, you reset, you allow flow. The Shaolin monks practice daily not just to strengthen muscles, but to clear the mind, to let energy move freely. You don't need to live in a temple to do this. It could be as simple as walking with awareness, practicing a martial art, stretching with intention, or even sitting in silence and noticing how your body feels. What matters is not how complex the practice is, but how present you are while doing it. The deeper truth is this: your body and mind are always speaking to each other, but most of us are too distracted to listen. We numb the body with business, and we numb the mind with noise. But when you slow down and reconnect, you realize they were never working against you. They were waiting for you to bring them together. And once you do, you experience a kind of freedom that cannot be shaken by circumstances because it lives inside of you. Strength is not about overpowering others. It is not about proving yourself to the world. It is about mastering the union of your body and your mind so that you live in balance, so that you move through life with clarity instead of confusion, with discipline instead of chaos. And once you discover that alignment, you realize that the power you were searching for was not somewhere outside of you. It was always waiting within. When most people think about strength, they picture something loud, aggressive, forceful. But the Shaolin path shows us that true strength is often the opposite. It's quiet, it's steady, and it's born from presence. In a world where everything demands our attention, phones buzzing, deadlines calling, responsibilities piling up, it's easy to scatter our energy in 100 directions. And when your energy is scattered, your mind becomes restless, your body becomes tired, and you feel like you're constantly running, but never actually arriving anywhere. The practice of mindfulness is the antidote to this way of living. Mindfulness is not about sitting on a cushion for hours or escaping from the world. It's about coming fully into this moment right now. When you eat, you taste. When you walk, you feel each step. When you speak, you listen to the words leaving your mouth and the silence between them. And when you breathe, you notice it. Because it is happening right here, not in the past, not in the future, but now. The Shaolin monks live by this. Every strike, every movement, every stillness is done with presence. That is why their actions carry such weight, such power. Because they are not half here and half lost somewhere else. They are fully present. For most of us, the challenge is not that we don't know how to be present. The challenge is that we forget. We get pulled into regrets of yesterday or anxieties of tomorrow. We replay conversations in our head or create stories that haven't even happened. Meanwhile, life is unfolding right in front of us, and we're missing it. Mindfulness is the training that brings us back. It's the reminder that happiness doesn't come from wishing for another time, another place, another life. It comes from inhabiting this one fully. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly alive? It probably wasn't when you were multitasking or rushing. It was when you were absorbed in the moment, laughing with someone you love, watching the sunset, creating something with your hands, or even just sitting quietly in peace. Those moments feel rich, not because they are rare, but because you were present enough to notice them. What if you could live that way more often? That's what mindfulness offers. Not a different life, but a deeper experience of the one you already have. No, some people resist mindfulness because they think it means slowing down and they're afraid they won't get things done. But the paradox is this: when you're mindful, you're not slower, you're more effective. Your energy is no longer scattered, so your actions are sharper, more deliberate. Imagine a monk striking a wooden post with his hand. If his focus is divided, the strike is weak. But when all of his energy, all of his attention is gathered into that single moment, the strike is powerful enough to break through. The same applies to how we live. Mindfulness doesn't take away your strength, it multiplies it. And here's the deeper gift of mindfulness. It frees you from being controlled by your thoughts and emotions. Without mindfulness, anger controls you, fear controls you, stress controls you. With mindfulness, you begin to notice them as they arise. You don't deny them. You see them clearly. And when you see clearly, you are no longer trapped. That's where freedom begins, and that's where resilience is born. You see, life will always throw challenges at you. There will be chaos. There will be loss. There will be moments when everything feels uncertain. But if you have trained your mind to return to the present, you will always have solid ground beneath your feet. You won't be swept away by the storm because you'll know how to anchor yourself. That's what makes mindfulness a warrior's skill, not just a practice for peace. It keeps you unshaken even when the world around you is shaking. So the invitation is simple, but not always easy. Be here. When you eat, eat. When you walk, walk. When you breathe, breathe. Don't live half in the past and half in the future. Live fully in the only place life ever happens, in this moment. Because the truth is, the strength you are searching for doesn't lie in what's next. It lies in your ability to be fully alive right now. One of the greatest illusions we live with is the idea that life should be smooth, that if we are doing things right, then everything will fall perfectly into place. But the Shaolin path teaches us something entirely different. Life is not meant to be free of obstacles. Obstacles are the path. They are not interruptions. They are not detours. They are the very training ground for our inner strength. Without resistance, muscles don't grow. Without resistance, muscles don't grow. Without friction, there is no fire. And without obstacles, the spirit cannot expand. Think about it. Every challenge you faced has forced you to become someone different, someone more resilient than you were before. Pain, loss, failure, rejection. These are not signs that you are weak. They are opportunities to discover just how much strength you carry within. A seed doesn't grow in comfort. It breaks apart in the dark soil under pressure before it ever reaches the light. And in the same way, every obstacle in your life carries within it the possibility of your transformation. But what makes the difference is your perspective. Most people spend so much energy resisting difficulties, wishing them away, complaining about why things are unfair. But the monk learns to embrace them, to bow to them as teachers. Because once you stop fighting against the reality of what is, you can begin to ask, what is this moment here to teach me? What strength is it calling me to build? That question alone can turn what feels like a burden into the very force that awakens your potential. I've seen this in so many lives. People who lost jobs but discovered their true calling. People who went through heartbreak and learned the meaning of love in a deeper, truer way. People who faced illness and uncovered a gratitude for life they had never known before. The obstacle itself didn't change. It was their response that transformed everything. This is the Shaolin lesson. You cannot control the storm, but you can train yourself to stand in it. You can train your mind not to crumble under pressure, but to rise because of it. And this training doesn't happen only in big dramatic life events. It begins in the small, everyday moments. When you're frustrated in traffic, when someone speaks to you harshly, when your plans fall apart, these are also opportunities to practice patience, humility, and flexibility. If you can stay grounded in the small storms, you prepare yourself for the bigger ones. It's like the monk who practices striking a tree again and again. At first, the hand hurts, the skin breaks, but with time, the hand becomes strong, conditioned, unshakable. Life does the same for us. Every obstacle is a strike. And if you stay with it, you don't become weaker, you become unbreakable. The obstacle is not the enemy. The obstacle is the forge. Without it, you would remain as you are. With it, you are given the chance to discover what you are capable of becoming. And here is something powerful to remember. No one grows from comfort. Growth only comes when the ground beneath you shakes, when life demands something more from you, when you are forced to rise to the challenge. That is when you step into your deeper power, and it is in this rising that real freedom is found. Because once you understand that obstacles are not there to destroy you, but to shape you, you stop fearing them. You stop being paralyzed by what if. You stop running from difficulties. Instead, you welcome them. Because you know each one is sharpening you, strengthening you, carving you into someone greater. So when the next obstacle appears, and it will, don't ask, why me? Ask, what strength is being built in me through this? That question shifts everything. Suddenly the challenge is no longer just something to endure, but something to transform through. And in that transformation, you realize something profound. The limits you thought you had were never the truth. They were simply the edges of your comfort zone, waiting for an obstacle to push you past them. Because in the end, it is not the easy moments that reveal who you are. It is the obstacles you face and how you rise to meet them that carve out the strength of your character and the depth of your soul. There is something profoundly misunderstood about strength in our world today. Too often we equate strength with rigidity, with toughness, with never bending, never breaking, never showing weakness. But the Shaolin path teaches a very different kind of strength, one that is flexible, adaptable, and rooted in balance. True inner power is not about becoming a stone wall that resists everything. It is about becoming like water, able to flow, to shift, to take the shape that is needed in each moment without losing its essence. When we try to hold on too tightly, When we grip to control everything around us, we create our own suffering. Life is not something that can be forced into submission. No matter how hard you resist, change will come, loss will come, surprises will come. If you've built your strength only on the idea of standing unmovable, then the moment life shakes, you will crumble. But if you have built your strength on balance, on the ability to move with life instead of against it, then nothing can destroy you. Think about bamboo. Bamboo looks delicate compared to a massive oak tree. The oak stands tall and hard, but in a storm, when the winds grow violent, it can snap and fall. The bamboo, on the other hand, bends, it sways, it bows to the storm, and when the storm passes, the bamboo rises again, unharmed. That is true resilience, not resistance, but flexibility, not hardness, but balance. This is why the Shaolin way insists on harmony between body, mind, and spirit. If one is neglected, the others cannot stand strong. If the mind is disciplined, but the body is weak, life's challenges will overwhelm you. If the body is powerful, but the spirit is empty, you will never find peace. Balance is not optional. It is the foundation of lasting strength. And here's where many people misunderstand power. They think it comes from domination, from winning every battle, from never showing vulnerability. But power without balance becomes arrogance. It becomes destructive. Balance is what keeps strength aligned with purpose, with compassion, with wisdom. Imagine a warrior who knows how to fight but has no self-control. That warrior is dangerous, not powerful. True strength is power under balance, power in service of something greater than ego. In everyday life, balance also means knowing when to push forward and when to pause. There is wisdom in both. Many of us live in a culture that glorifies constant movement, endless ambition, the grind that never stops. But without rest, without reflection, without stillness, we burn out. On the other hand, if we spend all our time in stillness, without action, nothing changes. The art is in learning when to move like fire and when to be still like earth, when to flow like water, and when to stand strong like a mountain. Balance doesn't mean living in the middle of extremes. It means moving fluidly between them as life requires. And this balance must begin within. If your mind is filled with chaos, no matter how strong your body looks, you will feel weak. If your body is drained and neglected, no matter how sharp your thoughts are, you will feel broken. And if your spirit is empty, even with a healthy mind and body, you will feel lost. The Shaolin way is to cultivate harmony in all three, because that balance creates a strength that no storm can destroy. When you live this way, balance becomes your compass. You begin to sense when you're leaning too far in one direction. Too much striving without gratitude, too much giving without receiving, too much speaking without listening. And with awareness, you return to center. That constant return is the practice. Not perfection, not staying in balance at all times, but noticing when you've drifted and gently guiding yourself back. And here is something deeply liberating. When you build your life on balance, you no longer fear losing, because you understand that falling is also part of balance. Every time you stumble, every time life knocks you off center, you are simply being invited to realign, to grow steadier. Failure doesn't break you. It strengthens the balance you are building within. So the invitation is this: do not seek strength that is rigid, brittle, or rooted in control. Seek the kind of strength that flows, that bends, that adapts. Let your life be like bamboo, firm in its roots, flexible in its form, and always returning upright no matter how fierce the storm. Because in the end, it is not hardness that will sustain you, but balance. And when you find that balance, you will realize that nothing outside of you has the power to take away the strength that lives within you. One of the most overlooked truths of the Shaolin path, and perhaps the most transformative, is that discipline and freedom are not opposites. We tend to think of freedom as the ability to do whatever we want, whenever we want. And we think of discipline as restriction, rules, boundaries, chains that hold us back from enjoyment. But the Shaolin lesson is far more profound. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It is the very thing that makes freedom possible. Think about this in the most practical sense. If you want freedom in your body, the freedom to move, to climb, to run, to live without constant aches or illness, that freedom doesn't come from neglect. It comes from discipline. It comes from showing up every day, training, nourishing your body, respecting its limits and challenging them wisely. The person who avoids discipline with their body in the name of freedom ends up imprisoned by fatigue, sickness, or weakness. The person who embraces discipline with their body gains the freedom to live fully, to move with energy, to do things that others can't. The same is true for the mind. Mental freedom, the ability to focus, to create, to remain steady in stress, to choose your response instead of being controlled by your impulses comes from mental discipline. Meditation, reflection, learning, these practices shape the mind. Without discipline, the mind becomes a restless servant to every distraction, every craving, every fear. With discipline, the mind becomes a master. And with that mastery comes the freedom to choose, the freedom to live intentionally, the freedom to direct your life rather than being pushed around by circumstance. We all crave freedom, but what most people fail to see is that freedom without discipline quickly becomes chaos. It's like trying to play beautiful music on an instrument you've never practiced. You might be free to press whatever keys you like, but what comes out will not be harmony. It will be noise. Discipline is what tunes the instrument, what trains the hand, what creates the structure that allows freedom to express itself beautifully. Now, here's something many resist. Discipline is hard. It asks for consistency. It asks for patience. It asks for sacrifice in the moment, even when the results may not show for weeks or months. And in a world that glorifies instant gratification, this feels unnatural. But the Shaolin way is to see beyond the immediate. Every act of discipline today is a seed. You may not see its growth instantly, but with time, with care, it becomes a tree that offers shade and fruit. Discipline is the soil that allows the seeds of freedom to grow. And this isn't only about personal strength. Discipline extends into relationships, into work, into purpose. If you want freedom in your relationships, the freedom to feel trust, closeness, authenticity, that requires discipline too. It requires the discipline to listen, to show up consistently, to control impulses that might harm someone you love. If you want freedom in your work, the freedom to choose projects that fulfill you, the freedom to succeed on your own terms, that freedom comes through the discipline of mastering your craft, showing up when it's hard, building credibility over time. Everywhere you look, the path to freedom runs straight through discipline. But here is the paradox that Shaolin wisdom illuminates. Once discipline is deeply rooted, it no longer feels like restriction. It becomes second nature. It becomes joy. The martial artist who trains for hours each day doesn't feel chained to the practice. They feel alive in it. The writer who disciplines themselves to write daily doesn't feel imprisoned by the routine. They feel liberated because they can express themselves freely. Discipline practiced long enough transforms into a kind of freedom that cannot be taken away because it is woven into who you are. And maybe the most important lesson is this: discipline is an act of self-respect. It is saying to yourself, I am worth the effort. My future is worth the investment. My purpose is worth the sacrifice. It is not punishment. It is devotion. It is the way you honor the life you've been given and the potential you carry. And when you live this way, the freedom you find is not fragile. It's not dependent on luck or circumstance. It is a freedom rooted in the strength of your own choices, your own commitment, your own willingness to walk the harder path for the sake of a deeper reward. So when you think of discipline, do not think of it as a cage. See it as a key that unlocks the door to the freedom you crave, a key that cannot be given to you by anyone else, but one you can forge with your own daily actions. And once you hold that key, once you understand that discipline and freedom are one, you will realize there are no limits to what you can build, no limits to what you can become, and no limits to how fully you can live.